With the help of the unwitting, bump up your life insurance. Purchase getaway car. Craigslist. Generic. Cheap. Pay cash. You need to package yourself so that people will truly mourn your loss. And America loves pregnant women.
All right. You know
I
that one, Dan.
You're getting better and better at these clips. I love this. Gone Girl. I've seen that movie 10,000 times.
I know you have, and that's unfortunate. But yeah, missing woman films. So I feel like we had to at least give it a gentle nod because it's very different from both of the missing women films we'll be discussing today.
Very, very different. Hey, folks, this is Film Trace. This is a podcast where we trace the life of a film from conception to production all the way to release and reception. It is our season on A24. We are on episode 4. We're going to talk about Under the Silver Lake from 2019 and La Ventura from 1960. Both Gone Girl films, technically. We have a special guest today, James of the Double Reel podcast. James, why don't you introduce yourself and let us know about the podcast?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you very much for having me on. So I am co-host on the Double Reel Film Podcast. That's Reel with 2 E's. We like to call ourselves the monthly magazine podcast for the discerning film nerd. Our monthly issue is made up of installments that come out most weeks. But the idea is that, you pick it up like a magazine and we've got various different features. We talk about the news, new releases, recent films we've watched, any projects. We catch up with a classic film we haven't seen before, tell other people about a hidden gem we want them to watch. We have a part of the issue called the Remakes Tribunal, where we ask whether a remake deserves to exist and offer a parole board to a bad movie to see if a remake would fix its problems. And we like to finish off with a spotlight where we get a guest on and do a deep dive on a filmmaker that we're really interested in. So it's kind of... Really what it is we just like to chat about movies, and we like to have that kind of chat about films where, you sit down and talk for an hour, and at the end of it, you've got like 6 recommendations of really good films to watch because you talk about something you love and somebody else says, well, if you love that, you should watch this, and you can go and watch that movie. That's what we're all about. So while we have lots of different features, it's just about loving films and finding something new to watch.
Awesome. Amazing. What was
sorry to monopolize things a little bit, but we do also have a YouTube channel now where I do a show called Maximum Disc, where we talk about films that I own on physical media. But that's just
I was looking at that.
That's a little sideline. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I was going to ask you on your Remakes Tribunal for Piranha 3D and The Relic. What were your final takes there, specifically on Piranha 3D? Because I saw that in the theater opening weekend.
So we sort of the tribunal has a verdict at the end about whether it should be wiped from history, and I don't think we were very kind to Piranha. We felt that it was pretty... It was just the fact that it was like Piranha was already a rip-off of something else, and the original, but done with so much more wit and style than this. And I just, we weren't very kind to Piranha. But with The Relic, we felt like there was what I think our phrase was: let's Quatermass the shit out of this. We
Absolutely,
figured if you take that story and make it like a Quatermass type like layout, we reckon that would have worked. So that was our idea for that.
I love that. I think The Relic was one of those movies that I saw also in the theater, and I was like, this could be so much better.
Yeah. That's exactly what that feature's for. Yeah.
It's amazing. Okay, cool. Let's dive into this, Under the Silver Lake and La Ventura. Usually how we like to start is, we can start with Under the Silver Lake because it's the most recent movie. Obviously, also my pick, Chris, right? I was adamant that we're going to do this movie for the A24 season. What we like to do, James, is we like to sort of talk about our baggage with each film. So with Under the Silver Lake, when did you first see it? And, is this like the first watch, second watch? Do you have any sort of relationship with the movie? For me, Under the Silver Lake is definitely one of my favorite movies of the last 25 years. I did not expect that going into it. David Robert Mitchell did It Follows, which is also one of my favorite movies of this century so far. And so I saw it right when it came out. Remember, it had a really strange release, which we'll talk about. Didn't really understand it at all the first time I saw it. I was like, well, that was weird. And then one of those movies where I started to go back to it over and over and over again. And so it's become one of my favorite movies, and this rewatch was an interesting rewatch for me. James, had you seen it before, or is this your first watch?
No, I hadn't seen it before. And the reason that, I volunteered to do this one, I was so fascinated by the reaction to this film when it came out. It was so divisive.
Yeah.
And one of the leading film critics over here in the UK, Mark Kermode, absolutely trashed it when it came out. He just hated it.
He's one of my favorite reviewers too. I love him.
Yeah, the thing is, he's very upfront about the fact you don't have to agree with him, and I think he seemed to have like a personal objection to what the film was doing and the point of view that it placed on its world and its characters, and it really put his back up. And when a film comes away like that, and some people absolutely adore it like you do, and other people don't just dislike it but are furious about it, that's just interesting to me. I don't know why I didn't quite watch it when it came out. I mean, I think it's a time period where I just missed it, and then 2019 was an incredibly busy time, and then COVID happened, and I just, I have a whole part of the pod about there's a film that you want to watch and don't get round to. That's a film that I hadn't got round to, so I wanted to watch it because of that. Also, when I started to read up about the film, I realised that it was connected to a lot of other films that I really, really like, and I won't step on those just yet. But I thought it's touching on some areas that really interest me, and I was also a big fan of It Follows. So I was just fascinated by this film. I just what is in this film that has got everybody so riled up?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those movies where it feels like you either love it or despise it. I have not found many people that are in between that.
Absolutely.
Chris, what about you? What's your relationship with Under the Silver Lake?
All right, so you got me riled up, so I'm gonna get into it.
That's what I was looking for.
I know. Dan picked this film specifically to rile me up, so I'm gonna deliver on that promise.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh. Okay, so I saw. You didn't see it in the theater, did you, Dan?
Well, remember, I couldn't. Okay,
right.
So one thing to note is that A24 essentially buried the film.
Right.
They put it out. Well, there's a whole long story. They delayed it multiple times. I'm going to get into it really quickly. Premiered Cannes 2018. Very, very mixed reviews. Now, keep in mind, A24 had already invested in the movie before it was produced. It shot in October 2016. They invested in May 2016. So they had a lot of money involved with the movie. It hits Cannes Film Festival. Very polarizing. It's supposed to come out in June 2018 in the United States. Doesn't happen. It gets moved back to December. Doesn't happen. They move it back to April 2019. It's released in precisely 2 theaters, one in New York City, one in Los Angeles. It's like a contractual thing. It was released for approximately 1 week. 3 days after the first day it premieres in the theaters, it's on digital. So they completely buried it.
Yeah. So
no, I didn't see it in the theater.
Right. Yeah. It's bizarre because of how much It Follows kind of catapulted not just David Robert Mitchell's career, but also like A24. Like that's the quote elevated horror movie, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm watching this at home, probably during COVID, so probably already not in a good mood. So I was honestly trying my best to come back and do this rewatch for the pod with an open mind. And there wasn't enough to make me feel like I was going to have an open mind within the first 10 minutes of the film.
Is there anything specifically that hit you?
I mean, I don't even know how to do this at 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning, but I'm going to try.
Love it.
This is the kind of encapsulation of essentially what I find so frustrating with how quickly we kind of look up to, quote, new auteur filmmakers and kind of give them free reign. And
this is going to be a good one.
I'm a huge David Lynch fan. I'm a huge LA Noir fan. Kiss Me Deadly is one of my favorites of all time. And then this comes along and just feels like everything being thrown at the screen, and then therefore you get nothing in return. It doesn't feel like it is saying anything. It doesn't feel like it's doing anything other than to provoke. There's some wonderful set pieces and masterful cinematography, and Disaster Piece does a wonderful score, just like he did for It Follows, but in a very different style. All the elements are there, but it just feels like spaghetti on the wall.
Doesn't click for you at all.
There's nothing here that makes me want to dig deeper. I'm not of the opinion that a lot of the critics were that despised it at the time, calling it misogynistic, but it does have this kind of, and it'll be strange having three dudes talking about this, but it very much feels like the whole like trying to have your cake and eat it too. Like
Totally.
we're gonna objectify, but our lead guy's an anti-hero, so we're not going to, we would never actually like make people want to think that this is okay, and yet you're just throwing it there on the screen. And we'll talk about this with Antonioni too, with L'Avventura later in the film, because that was obviously a kind of key inspiration, but it feels so undercooked, combined with just like irresponsible art.
Love it. Irresponsible art. We're already there in the first 10 minutes. Amazing. James,
it did occur to me that the people who would dislike this would be the ones who are huge fans of the touchstones that Mitchell's used here. Lynch is one, all of these other ones. And I don't want to. I thought there was a lot of Brian De Palma like voyeurism kind of being touched on, and also the fact that they actually give you a close up of Alfred Hitchcock's grave. I mean, even Brian De Palma at his most Hitchcockian didn't. I mean, he did have a big logo saying Bates High School, but he never went quite as far as actually photographing Hitchcock's grave.
Yeah. With Sydney Sweeney up against it.
Sydney Sweeney, I mean, like, yeah, it's so perfect.
Absolutely. It's very on the nose. And Brian De Palma, when you look at something like Body Double, it's absolutely the same, sort of, I think, intention, let's put it that way, that this is voyeurism, this character is a voyeur. Look at you watching all this happen. Look at you like watching me like run the camera over this woman's body. You're a voyeur as well. There's definite like intention to do the same there. And I think I'm sure a lot of the people who hate, not all of them, but a lot of the people who hate this film will be ones who loved what Mitchell's references, but didn't like the way Mitchell's version landed, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, James, when you dove into this for the first time, what was your initial reaction? Are you, like we're going to talk about L'Avventura, where people were booing it at Cannes, and the director and lead had to walk out crying, essentially. Was that your reaction negative, positive, muted? Where were you?
It's a little bit hard to say whether this would have been my authentic reaction if I was just watching it, say, hey, let's put Under the Silver Lake on, and spend my even doing it. Because in this case, I'm sitting here with some notes, watching it, going, okay, what's going on here? Do you know what I mean? So I'm already perhaps in a mode of trying to work out what's going on with the filmmaker's influences, and it's a bit of a problem watching anything specifically for a podcast, right? But I remember being interested in it to begin with. Definitely, sort of, I thought, okay, there he is standing in front of the sign saying "Beware the dog killer," and you start seeing all the different stuff, and I think I very quickly saw sort of the influences that were jumping to mind from it. There's The Big Lebowski, there's PTA's Inherent Vice, Altman's The Long Goodbye. I mean, generally anything with Rob Altman where they sort of wander around LA, right? A little bit of La Dolce Vita. Obviously, L'Avventura is a big influence as well. I also thought there was a certain amount of attempt to, and this might be me sort of reaching, but like that kind of dreamlike quality of something like The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie, where Buñuel goes, watch these people try and eat a meal and can't, and the rug keeps getting pulled from under them and they keep walking down. Massive David Lynch, Mulholland like Drive vibes, everything else, and the Brian De Palma. So I guess part of me was entertained by all the things that it was touching on. I don't know. I went along with it because I was genuinely interested. I think a big part of it is Andrew Garfield is a very, very engaging character. And that has its pluses and minuses, because if you've got one of the most engaging, likable actors you could possibly find to play like this 30-year-old character, what is the director's intention when the character he's playing is a very unpleasant character, He is a voyeur. He beats up some kids, He doesn't seem to actually care very much about the people around him, and yet it's been played by one of the nicest guys in Hollywood, But I think I was hooked enough to follow along with it and go down the rabbit hole. And there's three girls and a white rabbit, right? So literally go down the rabbit hole and see where this leads. I was interested enough to kind of see where it went.
That's okay. That's awesome. And you actually sound kind of like a medium take on it, which is very rare.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can't. I absolutely didn't come away like hating it and infuriated. And there were things that I absolutely loved. I have to acknowledge some of Chris's like criticisms there about spaghetti on the wall. I do think one of the differences here is just. Take any of them. I mean, the Coen brothers are actually incredibly disciplined filmmakers, and I don't like all of their stuff actually. But at their best, there's stories about The Big Lebowski where no one was allowed to change a line of the script. So every single line, like, that's just like your opinion, man. Like Jeff Bridges can pause where he wants, but he can't change a word of the dialogue. Do you know what I mean? And very, very disciplined stuff. And I think David Lynch, when he did Mulholland Drive, was incredibly disciplined. That film is so tightly controlled. He just doesn't tell you what's going on. Whereas this, I think, was much more ragged and loose around the edges in the way that, which meant that not all of it works because he's trying to do so much. But I did enjoy a lot of what he did.
Love it. Yeah, it's definitely, I don't know, like if it's like one of those movies that tells you more about yourself than the actual movie, how you see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It kind of reads you and kind of you put some stuff into it.
Here comes the manifesto. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I want to dive into at least like, how this started, how he even came up with the idea. He got interviewed for this movie, I think around the Cannes Film Festival, and he said, or is at Cannes, talking about how he even conceived of the movie. He says, it started when my wife and I were talking and sort of looking up at the houses in the hills in Los Angeles, and we were sort of wondering what happens up there, what really happens up there. It started with a conversation between us. I was drinking an intense amount of coffee, and it all just sort of came. It was a bit of a fever dream the way the script formed. I wrote it very quickly. I can't tell you exactly. It was a combination of wanting to do my version of an LA noir in a Los Angeles mystery, and then also the idea of what actually might be happening up there. So it's like he didn't necessarily have a clear concept of, where to begin and what this is really all about. It's kind of like an exploration, right? Ultimately, the film is him trying to understand an aspect of Los Angeles that is very palpable if you've been there before. There is this sense that, and this is why LA Noir works so well. There's this sunny disposition, this sunny surface to everything. It's beautiful weather, but there is an incredibly active and seedy underbelly to Los Angeles. Not just sort of like, people like, robbing stores or anything like that, or like human trafficking, that's all happening. But there's also this very specific sense of very rich people being in control of everything. And that's where the real sick and depraved things are happening. And I think like if you've been there before and you visited, you can kind of sense this. There's this vibe to the place. And I think that like that's where this movie sort of steps into. That's the toe it dips into this world of very rich people in control of a lot of different things doing very bad things. And I don't know, like Chris, let's talk about the noir, because that's the huge aspect to this. Did that work for you at all? The noir sort of vibes, the callbacks to The Long Goodbye. I mean, the way, his apartment is like basically based on that movie. Did that work for you? That sort of sense of the dark underbelly of Los Angeles?
Yeah, I mean, the mood setting is immaculate. Like feels like the one piece that isn't ragged, to use James's words. It doesn't come across as inauthentic by any means. It feels very much like I really like that concept, almost like a Pavement-inspired noir movie, where it is just kind of loose and shaggy, kind of like PTA's Inherent Vice. But where it falls apart for me is perhaps, now that we're talking about it, it almost feels like too referential. Like it is Like, this is like the ultimate like Baudrillard simulacrum LA noir movie, and that makes it also feel like stuffy and innavigable, and I just don't think that there was anything there besides the references, which is, I mean, I'm a big, you know me, Dan, I'm a big Pomo guy.
You love it.
I don't know what it is about this that feels like it crossed a line.
Well, let's talk about that. What line did it cross for you?
I mean, I think ultimately, I texted you about this last night, where like something that should be kind of like idiosyncratic in a good way, where like it sticks with you, ends up becoming almost like self-mocking, and I can't tell if it's naive or deliberate, but like the, you know, the women barking, the topless parrot owner, all these kinds of pieces that feel like they don't congeal. And I know that's part of the point, is that it's supposed to be this kind of disparate imagining of, you know, the paranoid, code obsessed kind of character that we're given, but nothing there for, like, the mood feels authentic, but like the character and the story feel completely just gibberish.
Yeah,
And
it's kind of like a vibe movie.
right, but like, yeah, and I was trying to you know, introspect a little bit, especially with La Ventura, which I also didn't click with, even though I love a lot of Antonioni's other films, and I'm trying to figure out, like, I love movies where nothing happens. Why don't I like these movies? There's something about them that feels like it's not just a vibe. It's also just like a, I don't know. It feels dirty. Like like the rewatch really stuck with me was you know, the running gag about how Andrew Garfield's Sam smells bad. And it's just like, yeah, like the whole movie smells bad.
I don't know, James, like, dive into that. Did you get that sense of, you know, there's this dirty grittiness to the whole thing? Did that rub you the wrong way? Did that bring you more into the world? How'd you react to that?
There was a point watching the film where I realized that all the notes that I was taking were the references.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've got Hitchcock's grave, Janet Gaynor's grave, the coyote. That reminds me of an episode of The Simpsons, and something else that I can't quite remember.
Yes. Yeah.
When he steals the milk from the supermarket. I know the context is entirely different, but it reminds
chili cook-off.
Yeah,
He eats the hot pepper.
Yeah,
but then no, when he comes up from the underground tunnel and he finds himself behind the supermarket and he reaches into the chiller and drinks some milk with that scene. We go, well, that's the opening scene of Big Lebowski, because like the dude's walking around the supermarket with the milk moustache and then pays with a check for 46 cents. I've seen that movie too many times. And then like listening to all the songs that the piano players, the songwriters playing on his piano, was that Crazy Train by Ozzy Osbourne? Yeah. And you know, and there's the White Rabbit, and even the topless parrot owner is obviously intended like the Long Goodbye, where like I think Altman's intention there was to take Philip Marlowe out of the 40s and drop him in the 70s and make him seem really alienated from the world that he's in.
Yeah.
So you've got like the traditional kind of gumshoe detective living next door to like 70s hippies, and it's women doing naked yoga on the roof next to his apartment. And it felt like a reference to that. And if I have a criticism, it's when Altman did that, there was a clear intention to what he was doing. Yeah. And when the Coen brothers did the Big Lebowski, there was a clear intention to making this kind of like psychedelic hippie the center of the noir story. And I mean, I enjoyed a lot of the references, and I certainly wasn't as rubbed up the wrong way as Chris was. But I do think probably there are people who look at a lot of movie making nowadays and go, "Oh, great, another Easter egg! Oh, great, another reference to another movie for the nerds to high five each other over." You know, and you can have too much of a good thing, I suppose.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of that South Park episode about Force Awakens, member berries.
Member berries, yeah.
where it's sort of like peppering all these sort of references. Hey, look at that. Do you recognize that? That's not a movie. That's not a plot, right? Like that's not a way to make a film. And I think that like, yeah, I mean, I think that's a very fair criticism of this movie. I would say to sort of counter it, I do feel like there is a lot of content here, and a lot of sort of rich narrative voice. He is trying to express something, the director and writer, of course, that is very specific, and it is very, it's funny. The denouement of this film was sort of like the resolution. When it came out, I was like, and obviously, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it, go see it. Don't listen to this podcast yet. With essentially, the Gone Girl, Sarah, being a part of this billionaire scheme to be like the pharaohs and be buried in a tomb. When that came out in 2019, when I saw it, I was like, well, that's stupid. Like, that's dumb. But now, hearing what has been going on behind the scenes in American politics for the last 6-7 years with massive billionaires pulling the strings essentially to our country, and hearing them talk and the people that they respect and the intellectuals that talk within their circles, what they actually think, it doesn't seem that far off. Like this crazy conclusion that David Robert Mitchell comes to as to what's going on behind the scenes. It actually seems really accurate.
So you think this is an Epstein movie?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like it's not that far off from like, that's the thing that really gets me with this whole thing is that like, yeah, sure, Andrew Garfield is this burnout loser, misogynistic kind of piece of shit. Like that's who he is. But that's also an honest reflection of a lot of men in America, especially millennial men. And it's also, I think, a really, really deft takedown of the nice guy mentality. The nice guy thing where, oh, you grew up in the 80s, you're into all this sort of cool pop culture stuff. You think that you're refined and educated and you know about the world. And you're, I don't know, like you're an intellectual, all these sort of things. But that doesn't protect anybody from being misogynistic and being a dirtbag. And I think, like, Sam is the perfect encapsulation of the millennial man in the sense that like he has all of these touch points of refinement and culture, but he's a terrible human being. And I think that like that's the thing that I think we need to dive into, because I think a lot of the criticism about this movie, and I think Chris, you definitely hinted at this, is the misogynistic patriarchal take. Again, we're three men, so like what the fuck can we say about this? But we have to approach it because that is, I read through a lot of these reviews when it came out and went back and read through them. That is the number one criticism of this film, is that, and I think even Sight and Sound in their con review of this said the same exact thing. David Robert Mitchell is trying to criticize something about masculinity and society in America in the 2010s. One, what is he trying to criticize? Two, is he successful? If he's not successful, why is he not successful? Like that's kind of the big question mark for this entire movie, because all the noir stuff, all the references, all the release stuff with A24, it's meaningless unless we can tackle that problem, the misogynistic patriarchal issue here. Chris, go for it.
Well, I go back to what James said earlier about it being too much of a good thing. I think that aspect is definitely worthy of exploration and its own film, but it's like one piece of 20,000 things here. So I think that's why it ends up rubbing even like the most prestigious critics the wrong way, because it doesn't actually delve into that any further than like a surface level. Like you've got everything going on with like your Epstein theory and the powers that be, going back to his conception of looking up into the hills and wondering what actually goes on up there. And then you've got like all the postmodern referential stuff. It gets lost in there. So I think it's totally fair to come back away with that meaning being meaningless because we don't actually see it. Like we get I loved actually the first, several minutes of the songwriter scene where, it's very like goofy and also referential, but also like seemingly trying to tap into this idea of the male psyche, and especially like the hipster male psyche. And then it just ends with him bashing the guy's head in with Kurt Cobain's Kadar, and I just end up like feeling like, okay, so what was the point? And then obviously it's never returned to, because it's not a movie where plot threads are returned to, or only certain ones are based on, whatever vibe the script is feeling at a time. And so I don't think that there's really much there. To go back to like my point earlier about like the set pieces, I love the chess party scene. Like Jimmy Simpson is a fantastic character actor, and you get dropped into this like really cool like comment on the how intellectualism and objectification are kind of go hand in hand. But then it just drops that to keep going with the, missing woman and codes, and there's nothing there that really feels like it pulls it together by the end. And so you're just kind of left with, okay, what's the parrot saying? Okay.
I don't know, James, as you sort of think about this film a little bit more, like how do you feel like this is a movie or film that you're going to come back to? Or is this just kind of like, oh, this is an interesting kind of tidbit and I probably won't revisit it?
No, I think I will watch it again because, I think it's obviously a film that's got a lot going on in it that, there are films that you watch where you need to get past even some of the things that irritated you to see if there's, more under there. And like there was some stuff that I really did enjoy, and I do think it, it's, for one thing I will say is that I can't help sort of rooting for someone who's been insanely ambitious with a movie.
Yeah.
It's like, go on then, let's do this. You really have tried all of that stuff. Let's give it a go. I really am prepared to give that film a chance. I mean, for example, it's a very different film, but I was one of the people that absolutely loved Babylon.
Nice, yeah.
And I love it unconditionally, including all the things that don't actually work in it, and the bits that massively rip off good. The second half massively rips off Goodfellas, because who doesn't? So many people rip off that second half of a movie kind of plotline. But I mean, one thing is I would say is, I do think there are enough points in this film where the intention of David Robert Mitchell is clear, because there's a scene where Andrew Garfield and Topher Grace are talking about those conspiracies about rich guys can do what they want and they can get women to do whatever they want. And Andrew Garfield's, very angst-ridden about this girl. And while they're doing that, they just start watching that drone camera that that Topher Grace has got, and they're just watching that girl, and they're going, "Oh, look, she's about to take her top off and everything else." And the fact is that woman, for whatever reason, is having a bit of a bad time and starts crying, and the camera lingers on that, and the camera is lingering not on her nudity, but on the fact that she's very upset. And they look at her for a second and then turn away and start talking about whatever. And I thought that and a number of other scenes did do enough to show, I think Mitchell's intentions were to criticize that kind of voyeurism. Yeah. And you always run that risk of saying, well, if you portray voyeurism, are you not just guilty of it? And I referenced Brian De Palma for a reason.
Yeah.
And Brian De Palma just leaned into it and said, guys, come on.
Well, it's also like
I'm going to look at this naked body. You're going to look at this naked body. Let's just get on with it. And he was kind of gleeful about it while commenting on it. And I think there's different ways you can approach it. And some of the stuff, the conspiracy stuff. I mean, that idea about the elites being able to do what they want. I mean, I quite enjoyed that in Eyes Wide Shut. That was another thing that kind of, the whole, that's been in, whether people like all of that movie, that thing about the masked sex parties in the country house, that's become an enduring kind of meme for everybody. The idea that the elites can do all of that. And the idea that billionaires could just get 3 women to hang out with him and do whatever he wants I think is definitely interesting. And I think where it works is where it's obvious that he's got no power. His car's been repossessed. He's about to be evicted for not paying his rent. Some of that's his fault. My sort of working class origins are like, guy, just go out and work a few shifts. How sorry am I supposed to feel about you unless there's some genuine reason? But there's no genuine reason. You're following a girl you met for 2 hours, and that's why you're going to get evicted from your apartment. But the fact that he's so kind of tied up in this because there are people in the world who've got stuff that he can never have. And like the bit of the songwriter scene that works best is when he knows that this guy, and I don't think the Pixies, Where's My Mind, or Smells Like Teen Spirit were written by an anonymous like songwriter, but that idea that there's someone who wrote a ditty in half an hour to meet a deadline, and that became someone's wedding song, that does ring a little bit true,
Yeah.
And I think what the film does, that when I enjoy it, is that it kind of distills that into how this no, he's not an incel because he's sleeping with lots of women, but this kind of conspiracy obsessed outsider, kind of loser slacker, the way he rolls that up into his own version of a conspiracy in response to the way the world works is when the film works well, Yeah. And there's bits like his girlfriend / friends with benefits. She keeps turning up, and whatever outfit she's wearing is supposedly for an acting role that she's doing.
Yeah.
But it's clearly the sort of thing that a prostitute would wear for role play to please a man.
Totally. Yeah.
And it's like, how much of this is happening in his head because he's stoned and obsessed, and how much of it is actually happening, I think, is when this movie works well,
Totally.
And when you're not sure if he's a dog killer or not, and you're not sure if he really cares about this girl or not, and you're not sure if this girl's really disappeared or not,
Yeah.
And I think that's when this movie works well, and when the references are a lot more subtle, like the 1935 Duesenberg, because that was like the symbol of elite kind of like wealth in 30s Hollywood. Clark Gable had one and all that kind of thing, and that stuff I think is when it works really well, and I think I enjoyed that. And my criticism is I don't think David Robert Mitchell completely lands the plane when Andrew Garfield finds out what's really going on,
Yeah.
But I enjoyed quite a lot of the ride along the way.
Yeah, it's definitely like one of those, it's not about the destination, it's the journey movies.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, like as much as I love the ending and I think it's pretty clever and interesting, it's also completely pointless. Right, because like the final scene of him is so clearly ambiguous as to what is going to happen in his life or what he's going to do about what he's found out. He's just sitting there, kind of like looking at the cop and the landlord going to his apartment. He's obviously gone and evicted. He can't go back. And what's he going to do? It's just it's like a classic noir thing. It ends on a very, very big question mark.
He looks almost relieved that he doesn't have that apartment anymore.
Exactly.
At the very end.
Yeah. There's a sense of, relief or satisfaction, but it's also ambiguous. It's just like, what is going on here? And I think that and we got to shift over to La Ventura to talk about, the influence here. But I do want to say that the reaction to this film mimics the film in a lot of ways. Like there's an interview with Mitchell in the New York Times right when this movie is coming out, which again, I don't really understand because they didn't actually do a release for this. That's not, dumping it on digital is not a release, right? But for some reason, New York Times interviewed Mitchell for it. It was just bizarre. In it, he says, I've talked with this about a couple of friends. Maybe this will grow on people, the film, and they'll appreciate it more years from now, implying that people don't get it immediately. He understands this as director. And then he goes and he pauses, shrugs, and says, or maybe not. He clearly knew that this vision that he had was not very palatable to a lot of people. And it was not going to be a big, huge blockbuster. It wasn't going to be a huge hit like It Follows was. I actually wrote the script before It Follows. So yeah, it's just going to be one of those films that's going to, to Chris's probably irritation, it's not going away. Like every generation younger than us is going to discover this film and talk about it and have these same exact conversations we've had about it. You know, whether it's misogynistic or criticizing misogyny, whether it's, you know, the codes actually mean something or they don't. Which makes me happy because I know to the day I die that people are going to be talking about this movie. So I am happy about that. Chris is going to be pissed though. All right, let's talk about La Ventura. I had never seen it before. Antonioni, I don't really know all that well whatsoever. My background in Italian cinema is not great. So this is a brand new watch for me. James, what about you?
Yeah, so Antonioni is a bit of a gap in my cinema knowledge as well. I've seen a little bit of the early neo-realists, a bit of Rome Open City, Rocco and his brothers. I love Fellini, and I've seen some of the more modern stuff like Cinema Paradiso. That's showing my age that a film from 38 years ago is modern. But you know, I have seen some Italian cinema, but this was a gap for me. I wonder if maybe it's the fact that Blow Up became like a parody before I'd even had a chance to see it. You know, before I've had a chance to see Blow Up, and I still haven't seen it yet. You know, Mel Brooks has done it. Mike Myers has done it in Austin Powers. You know, and Brian De Palma has kind of stolen half the idea to do Blow Out. You know, which I love, and I'm sure I will enjoy that movie when I see it. But I think there was probably going to Antonioni. He's that trendy '60s guy. You know. So sitting down to watch this. I mean, the good thing is I had like no baggage because I knew it wasn't Blow Up and I knew it was like early. I think I had a bit of a misconception that the whole movie was going to be set on the island when the girl disappears, that the whole movie would be them being stuck on the island trying to find her and not finding her, and that it would end up being this very surrealist thing. But in the end, it wasn't. It was actually they go off, they go home, they hang out, they almost get on with their lives, so they keep searching for the missing girl. So I had I didn't, in a lot of ways, I just didn't know what to expect. So I just sat and watched it. My biggest touchstone was it has some influence over the film I've just watched, Under the Silver Lake. So let's see what we get, you know?
Similarly, yeah, I was trying to separate my own baggage from Under the Silver Lake. I watched La Ventura first to try to have as much of a clean slate as possible. I love Blow Up. I love Blow Out too. I for a while taught the short story upon which Blow Up is based, and so I also love Red Desert, the film that he made right before Blow Up, and so I was ready to love this. I had seen clips of it in film classes, and as well as Le Note, the film that comes after it, that is allegedly, this is part of a trilogy. Les Clis is the closing one from '62. And I was super on board with it while it was on the island. And, it kind of went back and forth between just like being lost in the beauty of it. That's part of, the vibe here is that it's supposed to be as sumptuous as possible. And that very much overtakes any aspect of story or even character. But I think the key thing that stood out for me is this like elliptical structure that very much obviously influenced so many auteurs after the fact. I mean, Kurosawa claimed Antonioni as one of his favorites, and he was a contemporary, and then Kubrick also claimed him as a favorite. So I was trying to like get on its level, but then at some point once it goes on land, even though I will contend that what we're seeing here with the characters of Sandro and Claudia it still feels so much more real and like there's something to grab onto, unlike any character, including Sam in Under the Silver Lake. There still is this kind of like untouchability factor where it just feels a little too intangible, and I know that's once again part of the point, but that makes it very difficult to really truly click with the movie. But yeah, I mean, I think Monica Vitti is now I want to see all the other ones because, and she's great in Red Desert too. I highly recommend that along with Blow Up. But it does feel like it doesn't like it wants you to hold it at a distance.
Oh, absolutely.
Which
Yeah.
is curious, but not quite enough to make me actually like love the movie. I don't know. How do you feel, Dan?
Oh, it's a masterpiece. Like it is one of those movies that like, I'll be honest, like I didn't study film in college. My background in film history and film studies is, it's a hobby. I'm an amateur. I do it for fun. Because I like it. So I don't have like an academic viewpoint of this film or film history or anything like that. And so when I approach these movies, it's always like Umbrellas of Cherbourg is another example where I'm like, yeah, I don't understand the context, right? Like I just don't have it. I don't have the background to dive into it. So viewing this as sort of a more idiosyncratic, subjective viewpoint of just myself and my life and my experiences, and kind of diving into this movie, it's hard at first for me to sort of engage, but I found that this movie, the first 20 minutes, you're like, what is this? Because I honestly had no idea what this was about when I started it. And I was like, oh God, is this like a weird sort of like vacation movie? Like what the hell is going on?
Kind of.
A little bit. And then like, as you dive into it more and, Anna goes missing and the search happens and they go home, and then the love affair between Sandro and Claudia starts to blossom, and it just gets weirder and weirder. And I don't know. It's one of those films where I was absolutely transfixed for like the last hour. Like I could not take my eyes off the screen. Obviously Monica Vitti is beautiful, and she's just, for the camera, just pops in the camera. But that was just part of it. It's like, and this is the thing that I wish, I don't know if you guys have like a background to sort of talk to this, but in the Cannes Film Festival response is so fascinating to me that, like, to sort of give you the brief version of it, it premieres 1960. People are laughing at the movie from the opening sequence, laughing outwardly, booing, hissing, so bad, as I mentioned before, that Vitti and the director leave in tears. Like that's how visceral and negative the reaction was to this movie. Then, like the next day, a group of critics sign a letter that basically say, this is the best movie we have ever seen at this festival ever. The next day or something like a day or two later. And all of a sudden, the response to this film reverses from the booing and hissing at the premiere. And I'm trying to go back to my notes here. It was number 2 on the Sight and Sound critics list in 1962. Best film of all time, only behind Citizen Kane. How do we even approach that? I mean, like, the connection is direct to Under the Silver Lake, which had a terrible, or let's call it mixed, reaction at Cannes that killed the film, completely killed it. A24 was never going to release this movie with that reaction, which is, I think, bizarre for their background. Doesn't make any sense, but that's a whole nother story. Why do we think that La Ventura had such a divisive reaction? And then all of a sudden it becomes one of the best films of all time within a couple of years. I don't know, James, do you have any thoughts on that? Like what pops into your head as to why that might have happened?
I think where this is distinct from Under the Silver Lake, and I don't mean this as a criticism of Under the Silver Lake, because not every film has to like create a new way of making movies, right? Under the Silver Lake is obviously has decided consciously to reference film styles that already exist, like noir, yeah, and that's fine because I like film noir. I like modern movies which act in a noir fashion as well. Whereas I think what La Ventura was doing was probably making films in a new way. I think that in terms of technique and in terms of the way you portray scenes and characters, to say you can have a movie where it doesn't play to a specific resolution that kind of people are expecting, and it's signposted by the music. And there's a bit where you go from the second act to the third act, and that's going to happen, and be ready for the denouement. It didn't do that. it kind of almost on purpose, which can be a bit distancing for like somebody who just wants to watch a movie, right? Today. But it explains why someone like Scorsese went, oh, this film blew my mind, right? Because someone who has the tools to make a movie and also the tools to make a great movie themselves looks back at certain filmmakers and goes, oh yeah, I've got to do that. Which is why there are Godard films, you know, where I watched Alphaville and went, there's some stuff I really like here, but there's some other stuff that I'm like, what the hell is this? Why is the guy with the tracheotomy narrating the story, you know? And I think that, you know, and the thing is, Godard and Truffaut and those people did that stuff themselves. They referenced, you know, that it became a time when people would say, all these movies that got made, you know, the techniques that Hitchcock used, I want to use those for my movies. And like someone like Walter Hill in the 70s is influenced by the French New Wave when he makes The Driver, but The Driver is in no way a French New Wave film, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the reason L'Avventura had two things, probably a much worse response than Under the Silver Lake initially, but then was rescued because of that, but it became popular, was because people didn't like their expectations for a movie being completely destroyed. So, you don't get, you know, none of this makes sense. Why does Sandro and Claudia get together like literally 24 hours after they've lost their, you know, this person who supposedly means so much to them, you know? But critics and people went, oh, there's something new happening here. And in the 60s, there was a lot of that. There was the French New Wave. There was Arthur Penn doing Bonnie and Clyde and everyone going, you can make movies in a new way. And that's very exciting. And if you're not every great movie has to reinvent cinema, but I think in the 60s, there was a lot of filmmaking that was kind of leaving the past behind, which meant that it would get a bad reaction to begin with, but other people would take it to their hearts. Under the Silver Lake wasn't trying to do that, so wasn't going to get that reaction, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think there was like almost an air of, obviously, we're always going to be comparing these movies, one inspired by another, with a completely different frame of reference. Like this 60-year-old, 65-year-old film that, you know, we've been told over and over again is created by one of the best filmmakers of all time and is one of the best films of all time. It's going to hit way different than a 6-year-old movie starring Spider-Man from the trendy art house movie studio that has since become one of the biggest in original filmmaking. When I kind of try to wrap my head around what might have kind of created not just this polarizing effect, but this almost like slingshot effect of when it was released to how it's become regarded over time. You know, the number one thing that it makes me, the other number one movie it makes me think of that I had a similar reaction to was, it's going to sound bizarre, but Gus Van Sant's Jerry. The movie where Matt Damon and Casey Affleck are wandering a desert and basically nothing happens. And, you know, I first saw the film and basically took a nap to it. And it's just like, what is Van Sant doing? Yeah. And then I come back to it and I'm all of a sudden just like intoxicated, like transfixed, to use your word, Dan, by the amount of both nothingness and emptiness, but also just that kind of, all of a sudden you feel some kind of resonance with the characters, with that journey, once again, to call back to your idea earlier, Dan. And I mean, I could see that happening with this movie for sure. You know, there's also, as I always tend to get lost in the environmental factors. Like I first watched Under Silver Lake, you know, shortly after I'd been quarantined for several months. So it wasn't a great state of mind. But maybe that also makes it kind of the perfect movie for 2019, and then getting, you know, rediscovered on a home release for a lot of people. Similarly, you know, I'm having kind of a chaotic summer right now, and so when I first put on L'Avventura, it was a welcome change of pace. So like the first hour for me hit really hard, but for you, it was the second half. And then by the second half, I'm like, oh my God, I got stuff to do. Come on, let's wrap this up, Antonio. You know? So it is interesting to kind of think about that. I think the other piece that we kind of touched on a little bit, but haven't really dived into, but like one of the hangups that really kept me from fully investing in the movie is just something that is always going to be kind of a 50-50 shot for me. It's like when you have, rich, bored characters as your anchors, that it really tests my my limits of empathy. But I think so much of that works here is that you've got Claudia as this anchor, as the woman who's trying to grapple with so much and is essentially kind of trying to weigh so many options in her life and her love for her friend and her blossoming attraction to this scumbag. And with Under the Silver Lake, you've just got the scumbag, right? Like there is no counterweight there.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So that feels like a lot of things. I think also maybe like 60s. I don't know how many women-led films were being screened there at Cannes. I think that a lot of people might have been like, okay, I'm going to follow Sandro. And he just like becomes so clearly the ultimate villain that that probably rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. But then, with time and with reflection, it's like, no, Monica Vitti, that she is the star and she is La Ventura.
No, absolutely. I mean, there's one of the scenes that sticks out to me in the film is when she's left alone on the street. I think I don't know what town it's in. And the men start gawking at her and leering and start surrounding her. And it's like, how do we, that type of criticism or social critique is so clear and palpable and visceral. It does seem a little bit more effective than what we get in Under the Silver Lake, which is women barking and like, a lot of like hints here and there. James, did that scene work for you well in La Ventura? Like,
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had a similar thing with it, which is like, I said I'm going to watch this movie for the pod, and often when I watch a film for the pod, I rent it and stream it, and because I'm being a bit of a physical media geek at the moment, I did actually buy the Criterion Blu-ray of this. I just thought, if this is supposedly a classic movie, I'm going to watch this, and I'll read the essay and pass off some of the opinions as my own.
Classic. You're on the right podcast, buddy.
Absolutely. And so I thought, I'll be watching this again. So I'm sort of getting into it. And at the same time, there was an element of, why are these people meandering off the island? What's going on? But they foreshadow that scene a little bit as well, don't they? Because Gloria, the kind of unapologetic, I'm. It's funny how it's 65 years ago, but the difference between the two kind of like potential approaches to fame and notoriety are there, because she's like, oh, look, everyone's staring at me, and you've got influencers on social media now going, oh yeah, it's fine, someone's seen me nude, go on my OnlyFans and pay me. And then you've got another celebrity who's like, oh my God, someone's seen me nude, my photos have been leaked, it's terrible, this is going to be bad for me. I think there was an interesting foreshadowing that she's quite happy about it when a whole town is basically ground to a halt to kind of stare at her, And if you've ever been to Italy or know Italian people, there are Italian women now who kind of go, yeah, there's a big vibe of that. You walk around and men's eyes look, sort of boring into your back as you walk down the street. It's really quite a major thing. So when Claudia walks in there and she's on her own in the street for like 2 minutes, and suddenly she's surrounded by some really sinister looking guys staring her in the face, I thought that was a really effective scene, because what Antonioni's been doing all this time, and obviously I'm sure he was aware of the stuff that Fellini's doing. I mean, La Dolce Vita comes out the same year, so maybe he hasn't seen that. But it's, there is a thing where I've just recently been watching some Wong Kar-wai stuff as well, and it's if you photograph somebody a certain way, you can make them look absolutely extraordinary,
Yeah, totally.
And obviously male directors, and the right cinematographer and the right camera and the right angle, it's been a thing since like movies were invented, that let's point the camera at this woman and make her look absolutely extraordinary, and then put her on the side of a massive screen that everybody's staring at and turn them into an icon,
Yeah.
And you're sitting there doing that and your mouth falls open. Monica Vitti is absolutely iconic in this movie, you know? And then it's like, well, imagine if you stopped and stared at her when she was walking down the street in front of you. I thought it was really interesting for him to comment on voyeurism in that way, you know?
Yeah.
It's a
and I thought that was really
effective.
effective, yeah.
It's somehow both like incredibly bold, but also very subtle, which is also not David Robert Mitchell's game in Under the Silver Lake, right? Like literally creating a Rear Window apartment complex.
Well, it goes back to that scene with Topher Grace and the drone, and like them. It's you know, whereas Under the Silver Lake is, I think, a little bit more like a bludgeoned when it comes to messaging. You know, that scene specifically where she starts crying and it lingers, like James said, on her crying. And not only does it linger, but it zooms in. There's a slow zoom as she starts to cry. And then the immediate reaction is Sam's like, I gotta go. I'm out of here. You know, it's a very different style than what Antonioni is doing here. Is one effective? Is one not effective? You know, and I think what James brings up in terms of showing beautiful women on the screen and accenting their beauty in a very intentional and specific way it is a tightrope walk. You know, if you're trying to criticize something or illuminate something about our existence in life and you put it up on the big screen, it's a double-edged sword, right? And this is something like going back to Scorsese and like violence and like his critique of violence in Goodfellas and his critique of Wall Street and capitalism on Wolf of Wall Street. It plays both ways. And as much as we, you know, an intellectual would be like, well, Wolf of Wall Street is about, you know, it's criticizing capitalism and all these sort of things. There's just as many people out there that see that movie and think that's a celebration of greed. And so with like La Ventura, I'll be honest, like I'm watching this and Monica Vitti is so beautiful that like I don't know how much of the story I'm getting. If I'm being totally honest, because she's truly transfixingly beautiful. And
that's what you meant by transfixed. I get it.
Exactly. But at the same time, that's not just her. That's, as you know, James was saying, it's also the director and like his viewpoint of her. And so I don't know. It's in
the Italian countryside and islands and
just gorgeous. Yeah, everything is beautiful and gorgeous. But yeah, it's like, I think one of the things that makes sense with both of these movies is that for me, both of them work incredibly well and it's able to approach these topics like misogyny, like mass media, image versus reality, and actually come out with a film that is seemingly cohesive and enjoyable is a pretty amazing feat.
Cohesive is not a word I'd use for either of these movies.
But I would say that's like, you can criticize the narrative being cohesive. Like that's totally fine, the plot. But the emotional impact is not. Like the emotional impact on both of these movies, especially La Ventura, is there. And so as much as they played with plot convention and how you tell a story and undermining that, they're also doing something else completely different that is highly impactful. And as much as we want to criticize Under the Silver Lake, you cannot say that it wasn't impactful and did not start a lot of discussion, right? So there's something there.
I thought what was interesting about the voyeurism in Under the Silver Lake was he's kind of reducing the women down. I mean, the main character, not so much David Robert Mitchell. To be fair, let's say what he's commenting on. He's commenting on voyeurism in a way that it reduces a woman down to the size of a phone screen or a photograph. I mean, a lot of the time he uses images as masturbation material, very explicitly so in this movie. And women are condensed down to something he can just look at. And Antonioni's doing the opposite, not in terms of, and I don't mean that morally. I mean, he's putting Monica Vitti on the side of a building and making her look 50 feet high, which initially makes you think it's given her power. This kind of story about like women, dressing revealingly, being empowerment, girl power, the Spice Girls and everything in the UK was a big thing. The idea, And you get it in like hip hop culture and stuff as well. Again, and I'm not the guy to talk about whether women can do or not do. They can do whatever they want. This is just, I think it's an interesting situation in which, what a funny coincidence that women acting in exactly the way men want and dressing in exactly the way men want them to is being deemed empowering, right? And then so he puts her up on the wall and goes, Monica Vitti is now an icon and makes people go weak at the knees. Have you given her any power? He says, well, put her in the middle of the street and have everybody stare at her, maybe not. And I thought the commentary is different. And I thought it was interesting, that contrast. I think they're both trying to do different things with the way that they're pointing the camera at women.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, they're both very complicated films, I would say, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way that you could watch either of these and not have some sort of strong reaction, positive or negative or somewhere in the middle.
Right. Impactful, I think, is a fair word, even for somebody like me where the films didn't click. But you know what else is impactful?
Trivia.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Thank you. I was going to say a day-old burrito in the fridge that you probably should just throw away. But yes, let's wrap this up with some trivia. James, basically what I'll be doing here is reading a quote from a director speaking about their inspirations while making a A24 film from either 2019, 2020, right around the same time as Under the Silver Lake. And there is a graphic at the bottom of the document I sent you. And those are the multiple choice options. Best of 5 wins. And we will begin unless you have any questions.
No. Thank you for the explanation. I'm glad I've got the graphic. I at least have a chance to guess some of these.
Exactly. All right. Number 1. The director says, the two remind me most in name and in spirit of Bowie and Keachie and Nicholas Ray's They Live by Night. These characters become outlaws for the sake of each other. They must slip away into the night because there's no room for them by the light of day.
First Cow.
Nice work, Dan. All right.
That was the softball, because I love They Live by Night.
Yeah, I did pick that especially for you. And we've got an episode about First Cow. That was one of those.
That was the first season, I think.
Early episodes. Yeah, love that movie.
During the COVID heyday.
Number 2. The director says, Treasure of the Sierra Madre was on the mind. In fact, I don't think I've ever said this before, but we were having a hard time figuring out how the main character was going to talk. For the first version in which the character had any kind of personality, we were thinking about Humphrey Bogart in Treasure of the Sierra Madre. We knew that was not the character and that he's never going to be like that in the end, but our first way in was with that character.
So, Uncut Gems?
Great guess, but no.
That was going to be my guess. I was going to say High Life.
Nope. But good guess because of Robert Pattinson's penchant for weird voices.
I don't know, James. You're next. You got
my
guess,
wild
buddy.
shot in the dark is The Last Black Man in San Francisco.
Ooh, nope, not that one either.
No.
What is this? Is a tough one. Lighthouse.
I'm at a loss
there you
here.
go, Dan. It is Robert Pattinson.
Okay.
Nice work. Okay, 2 up. You're still in it though, James. Let's see if you get this one. Alien. I watched so many horror movies, and it was really just about the classic tonal horrors and thrillers, where it wasn't about the editing and cutting. It's about how do you take a static frame like Ridley Scott did and fill it with tension.
St. Maud?
Nope, makes sense. Horror movie.
Guess too. That was going to be my guess.
That's the curveball.
Waves.
Nope.
Oh, okay. James,
High Life?
Nope.
Oh,
my God, we're dying here. We're dying on the vine.
this is like an England penalty shootout for me.
not Uncut Gems. James, it's to you now.
Oh my God.
It's not a horror movie, but static frames full of tension.
Static frames. Tension.
I love this movie.
Is it The Farewell?
There you go, James.
Oh,
nice one.
Really?
Yeah.
Who directed that again?
Lulu Wang, Barry Jenkins' wife. It's
That's what she said.
Yeah, and
I gotta rewatch that movie because I don't remember it that way at all.
Oh my gosh, I've seen it a
great
lot,
movie.
and
Yeah.
it's very weird how that is an inspiration, but it makes sense if you keep that in mind. All right, 2-1. James, bring it home with a tie, so we can have an exciting final question. Here we go. I just love all of Ozu's films. The way that family is the protagonist in his movies, and it's not about one individual and one hero. It's really about the family and the journey they take together, and that's something I really tried to study.
Minari?
There you go, James.
Oh,
Nice.
no, here we go.
2-2.
This is like a shootout.
Okay.
I think who missed the shootout? Saka? Did he make a family shootout?
No, it's the England women's team just won the European Championships, and one of their winning games, there was a penalty shootout where they were like 15 penalties and only 4 were scored in total.
Oh my God!
Wow!
It's a curse.
I have no fingernails left.
Here is the final question. The quote is, in terms of having these intense interior monologues and protagonists who are anti-heroes with a mixture of self-loathing and arrogance, which I find quite sympathetic when you can see the flaws in the characters, perhaps most notably like Travis Bickle of Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver.
Uncut Gems?
Nope.
Waves?
Nope.
James, your shot.
On the Rocks?
Nope.
St. Maud?
There you go, Dan.
Oh, as per tradition.
Oh my gosh.
I hate that movie.
Oh, I absolutely
I hate a
love
lot of these movies on this list, Chris. I mean, those are The Lighthouse. Almost walked out.
Oh my gosh, what a fun round. Thank you so much for playing, James, and thanks for being a guest here.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
What do you got coming up on Double
remind our
Reel?
listeners.
So yeah, the Double Reel Film podcast is out now. Our next episode is coming out. Is going to be about remakes, where we talk about films from the year 2000, which we ask whether the remake of Shaft deserved to exist, and whether we could remake U571 so John Bon Jovi doesn't win the war. Maximum Disc, my YouTube channel, we've got a number of reviews coming out. I've just talked about Lawrence of Arabia on Blu-ray. We've got more coming out soon, but just jump on the feed any old time and you'll just hear some film nerds who love movies as much as you do talking about things that you might like to watch. And on our socials, it's Double Reel Film or Double Reel Podcast, some version of that on Threads, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, YouTube. We're around. Come and have a look.
Awesome. Thanks again for joining us. What do we got coming up on Film Chase? We got continuing our A24 season. Next week we'll have First Reformed, which is going to be another spicy movie.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah, me too.
And then It Comes at Night, Green Room, Enemy, Spring Breakers. We're going back into the history of A24. As always, thank you for listening. This has been Film Trace.